Welcome to the Recruiting Stories podcast, where we celebrate recruiting by exploring the stories of leaders and top performers by digging into their stories and understanding how recruiting has impacted their journey and their success. All right, guys, welcome to another edition of the Recruiting Stories podcast. I'm thrilled to have our guest this month, Johnny Quinn. Johnny, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so Johnny he's a former NFL player. He's an Olympian in the sport of bobsled, keynote speaker, best-selling author, entrepreneur, most importantly, husband and father. We were talking a little bit about that offline here, and thrilled to have him. Johnny's he's exciting for me to talk to. We share a few things in common here, specifically on the sports side. We both played college football. We both did bobsled, but Johnny was a way more successful both football and bobsledder than I was. So I'm excited to hear from him today and a little bit about his story. So you guys might know Johnny actually from his viral Great Escape from the Sochi Olympics, breaking down a bathroom door. Johnny, would you mind walking us through a little bit about just Sochi and then how you broke out there and how that's expanded into where you are today?
Yeah, it was too funny. I was in the Olympics 2014 over in Sochi, Russia, and I was in the Olympic Village. And Adrian, I got stuck in my bathroom. I could not get out of my bathroom in the Olympic Village. And so I broke down this door. I took a picture. I put it on social media, and it went crazy. 28,000 retweets, seen by an estimated 10 million people around the world. I mean, it just went nuts. So who knew a door in Russia would have created so much excitement? I should have kept some of the door. I didn't know.
You should have. Who knew?
Yeah.
And what's crazy about that is, I feel like obviously social media was big at that time, but I don't feel like we knew how big social media was. And it's only just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Was that like an eye opener to you that something could just have that much reach so quickly?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I picked up 20,000 followers in 24 hours, and my phone battery was just going insane. It was just going crazy. And here's what I thought: what was so interesting when I was named to the Olympic team, I thought all these endorsement deals were going to start coming in. None came in. When I broke down the door in Russia and I picked up all these social media followers overnight, the next day I had an endorsement deal on the table from McDonald's. They wanted to tweet from my account during the Olympic Games. And so we did a 5-tweet deal, and just kind of funny to see what really brings in the money.
Well, yeah, right. It seems like it's almost more about influence, for instance, sometimes, than it would feel like credibility of having made the Olympic team in some way. So
you're spot on.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about Olympics real quick, and then I want to dive into your recruiting stories. Obviously, we've got Beijing this year. Anything you think we should watch for? Your thoughts on kind of what's going on with China this year? Any athletes to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I'm a little biased, but we need to keep our eyes and ears on Team USA bobsled, right? I mean, the women are just cleaning up shop on the World Cup circuit. A lot of Miles Taylor, who had a chance to compete with in the 2014 games, we were teammates. She won the overall women's World Cup title in the 2-man and the monobob. Mm-hmm. And then Kaylee Humphreys, she's been with Team Canada for the last 3 Olympics, so she moves over to Team USA. So I think Team USA women are going to go 1-2 in the Olympic Games, which would be huge. Yeah, and they've got 2 new, rookie brakemen on there. The alternates, Asia Evans, who she's got a silver medal in her bag from 2014. So our women's team is extremely strong. And then the men's team, I'm excited for USA 1. They won a bronze in Winterberg last week, and they had the fastest push times. And so they are really starting to gel at the right time. So eyes and ears are going to be on Team USA bobsled.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see. I feel like the women's team, like you said, is just absolutely stacked. And any time with Team USA, there's just, and what I remember for winning with my experience, getting to compete on the America's Cup circuit there, I was just shocked at the level of athlete, like from all corners of the country. Like you couldn't be a slouch at all. I mean, you were competing against the best of the best athletes. Not just obviously in bobsled, but just pure athletes, which was right to me. So, well, cool, very good. Well, obviously a lot to think about here with Olympics I love it because after football's over, there's normally kind of a letdown for me, and I'm kind of like, all right, what do I watch for a little bit?
Yeah.
It's helpful. But let's talk a little bit about your recruiting story. So, really on this podcast, we like to talk with leaders and top performers about how recruiting impacted their journey, their success, their story. And for you, I know, just like for me in many ways, sports was kind of this conduit, this vehicle that opened up a lot of doors for you in life. Can you kind of step back to even like high school and what got you started on your journey into sports and kind of where it led you today?
Yeah. Growing up, I was just attracted to sports. Sports came, when I say easy, just a lot of hand-eye coordination, so I enjoyed it. And I knew, Adrian, I wanted to go pro. But I didn't know pro in what until I got a little bit older, started playing football in 7th grade. And that was it. I'm like, I want to be a professional football player. But I realized at a young age, when you have a big goal like that, you can't sit back and hope that it happens. You have to actively pursue it. And Adrian, my recruiting story really picks up my senior year in high school. I didn't really do much my junior year. We had a running back who was a phenomenal player. He went on to lead the state of Texas in rushing. He went to the University of Oklahoma. He won Texas High School Player of the Year. So, my junior year was just blocking downfield for him. And we had a great season. But when it came to recruiting, I had nothing. I was even honorable mention all district. And so here I am with this NFL dream. I'm a junior in high school with nothing. And so I'm going into my senior year thinking, oh my gosh, I no stats, no film. I want to go pro. I got to figure out a way to make some plays. And my senior year in high school, Adrian, I led the entire state of Texas in receptions. I finished second in receiving touchdowns. And so I finally had what all the college gurus and the scouts said you need. I had the film and I had the awards. I got selected to first team All-State. They only named 2 wide receivers. I was one of them. So I finally had all the data and all the accolades. But Adrian, I had no offers. And so I was, my recruiting story, I was so confused because I had what all the experts said I needed, and I had 0 scholarship offers until 2 days before signing day.
Wow.
I had my first offer come in from the University of North Texas, my first Division I offer, which was right in my backyard, about 30 minutes from where I grew up. And so I couldn't turn that down. And it was an interesting journey for me through the recruiting ranks.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you said, all right, kind of final hour, I get the opportunity to jump in with North Texas. And I know my story that certainly resonates, bring back some good and bad memories both, right? I know it's like, oh man, I feel like I'm being overlooked here. And, I can run fast and I can jump high, I can do these things. I'm not getting the looks I get, but you got an offer, right? So you did get that offer. Tell me a little bit about what that process. Was there a coach that said, hey, that made the difference, or it was just like, North Texas is close to home, so I want to be there? What made the difference for you going there rather than saying, hey, I'm going to try anywhere else or walk on somewhere bigger?
Right. Well, if North Texas didn't come in with an offer, I was set to walk on at Texas Tech. Both North Texas and Texas Tech brought me in for official visits. But at the end of an official visit, when the head coach normally offers a scholarship, they both offered me a walk-on opportunity. So North Texas did the same thing. So, I don't have confirmation of this, but I guess maybe one of the receivers turned down North Texas. So that opened up a spot for me. And I just couldn't turn down a full scholarship in my backyard. But had nobody have offered, my original plan was to walk on to Texas Tech because Wes Welker just graduated and kind of fit that mold of that style of wide receiver. So I saw that opportunity. But, here's what's funny, Adrian, looking back now. Was I frustrated? Absolutely, because I had the stats and I had the awards. But sometimes all you need in life is one opportunity. Absolutely. I don't care how you get it, but just one opportunity. And now looking back, going to the University of North Texas was the best thing for me, because although my scholarship was in football, Adrian, I earned a degree in pre-law. I also walked onto the track and field team. So I ran 4 years of Division I track. So I was a dual sport athlete in college, and it really set the tone for my journey into the professional football, but then also into Olympic bobsledding.
And I was going to say, from what I know about your story, and feel free to elaborate, is, that step going on to the North Texas football team, the track team, getting your degree there, you had a ton of success, right? Broke records, some of which may still stand today even. And you took advantage of that opportunity and you ran with it all the way into the NFL and then into bobsled. So tell me a little bit about that story of how you went from, okay, I'm going to take this, even though maybe I wanted to go to the big school, I'm going to rock and roll where I'm at, and how that led into an opportunity in the NFL.
Right. Well, when I got on campus as a undersized student athlete my freshman year in college, here's what I realized. I had an opportunity. Doesn't matter how you get there, I was there. And so one of the first things I did early on, and I still do this now, and I'm in a different industry, is I looked at the record book. I wanted to know who set the records, right? What are the receiving records, yardages, touchdowns, receptions. And so I had a visual, I had a target of where I wanted to go. And so my senior year, I broke the reception record. I broke the yardage record, and I finished second in touchdown. So I went 1-1-2. Awesome. And one of those records held for 5 years. The other one just got broke 20 years later. Right. Wow. So what is so interesting is that I started with the end in mind. And I think there's some wisdom in that, is I knew the direction I wanted to go, and that's what I was going after. And so even when I was getting ready for the NFL draft, my agent called and said, Johnny, I've got some great news. I think you're going to get drafted. I said, agent, that's some good news. He goes, Johnny, you were in the top 10 in career receptions, career yards, career touchdowns. And so he goes, we looked at the previous 9 NFL drafts, and they're drafting somewhere between 28 and 32 wide receivers. So, Adrian, here I am again, right? I tore it up in college. My production says I'm in the top 10. The last 9 NFL drafts, they're taking between 28 to 32 wide receivers. You really don't need to be a math whiz to understand that, okay, hey, hurry up draft day. Who's going to give me a chance? And, Adrian, when the NFL draft came, 35 wide receivers were drafted, and I was not one of them. So here we go again. I've got the production, I've got the stats, I've got the accolades, and nothing comes in from a drafted standpoint. Now, shortly after the draft, I signed my first NFL contract with the Buffalo Bills. But I remember signing that, Adrian, and here's what I remember thinking, I've been in this spot before where we've got some doubters that, okay, it didn't, go the way I thought it was going to go, but I have an opportunity. And that's what, I want our listeners to think about is let's find a way to create an opportunity.
I love that idea of that mindset of just what's your opportunity and taking advantage of that opportunity. Yeah. Sometimes all you need is just that window, right? If you get that window of opportunity, that's your chance. And you might fail at it, right? But you might succeed. And you're a shining example of, hey, I'm going to take it and I'm going to run with it, and I'm going to show people that I'm capable of that.
Well, it's funny you say that, because it in high school it worked, in college it worked. And so here I am, entering professional football with the kind of that same mentality. Okay, we're going to put the work in. I've got the opportunity. But Adrian, it did not work in professional football because I got cut. Yeah. And then I go to the Green Bay Packers, and then I get cut. And then I go to the Canadian Football League. I blow out my knee and get cut. So now I'm having a little bit of crisis management, because I'm thinking, well, wait a second. I've been here before. You work hard, you show up early. You work hard, you stay late. Right? That's the formula. That's the flow. And it didn't work this time because I got cut.
Right.
And so here I am, 26 years old. My first, career as a pro football player was an absolute train wreck. I was cut 3 times. I lost $2.6 million, and I blew out my knee. So I'm thinking, uh-oh. Yeah. Life's not going the way I thought it was going to go.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I had an opportunity. Right? An unexpected opportunity where bobsledding came on my map. Since there's no NCAA, you know this, since there's no college level bobsledding, they recruit from typically football and track and field. There's some other sports in there, but those are kind of the main two. And so I'm kind of back in that same mode. Wow, I live in Texas. We don't really get any snow. I don't have any skills bobsledding. Can I pick something up new? Am I available for an unexpected opportunity? I said yes. And then 4 years later, I became a United States Olympian.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, was there like a teammate that said, hey, I'm trying out for bobsled? Was there a coach that ran into with an agent that reached out? What was that process like for you to help you say, hey, I'm going to go try out this bobsled thing? And what made the difference for you to say, that's an opportunity that I'm interested in?
Yeah. Well, when I got cut the third time and blew up my knee, I realized I looked like damaged goods on paper to general managers. I mean, the football door has shut at that point. Yep. And so I realized that door is closed, but I felt like Adrian, I still had something left in the tank. Mm-hmm. Well, where can I, channel that? Yeah. And some things started to line up. My mom, her coworker, was a bobsledder back in the day. Wow. My agent represented a bobsledder back in the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. So some paths started to cross where it's like, maybe we should try this out. And so I sent some of my film to the Olympic Training Center of me sprinting. Yeah. And they said, hey, why don't you come out here in a couple months, push a bobsled around, see if you like it. And so I said, okay, but I was still kind of holding on to that football hope that maybe my agent, will find something. So I was like, well, if my agent calls, I'm out of here, Mm-hmm. And true story, Adrian, a month before I'm supposed to go, try out bobsled, I get a call from one of the drivers. And he's like, hey, one of my guys has showed up overweight. Do you want to come up now and compete in the U.S. 4-man team trials? And I'm thinking, okay, well, when's the race? And he goes, it's in 2 days. I said, 2 days, man. I've never pushed a bobsled in my life. He's like, Johnny, all you have to do is get in a sled. And so, Adrian, true story, I fly in the night before team trials to the Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid, New York. My first time ever on ice was at the U.S. 4-man team trials. And we took third place. That's fantastic. And that was my intro to bobsled. That's awesome.
It's hard to explain to people when I get asked about what's riding a bobsled like. I say, it's like getting in spandex, wearing spiky shoes, and wrapping yourself another man and running down a icy chute as fast as you can. That's what it's like.
Right. Yeah.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool, man. Well, okay. So what I love about your story, Johnny, is one, your mindset makes all the difference about taking that opportunity that you have, making the most of it. I also love that there's a few little pieces that made all the difference too, right? Somebody at North Texas, whether that was just the offer, just believing in you to say, hey, you know what? Let's give Johnny the scholarship here. Or let's give him a chance. That one chance turned into a ton of success. Somebody saying, hey, you know what? I think Johnny would be good at pushing a bobsled. And you saying, hey, you know what? I think that's something that I'm interested in. From maybe what felt like random places coming into your life, pivoted your career into a direction to where you became an Olympian, which I think is incredible. Talk to me about coming out of that, right? Going into the Olympics, right? And then, you talked about Sochi earlier, social media, phenomenon, all that goes dark. And now what, right? Now I'm an entrepreneur, right? You've written a best-selling book. You speak all over the country. Tell me a little bit about that process. And now you hire people as well. So tell me, I guess, how it led from that sports to business, and maybe what your concept is on both business and recruiting and life from there.
Right. Yeah, good questions, Adrian. When I got cut the first time from the NFL, that was Adrian, that really knocked me down because, and we know this growing up as athletes because you hear it all the time is, make sure you have a plan B or, one day sports are going to end. And it does. It ends for everybody. But kind of, when you're playing sports, you're like, yeah, I get that. But when I got cut the first time, that was a kind of like just a hard stop saying, you know what? this is truthful. I've got to make sure that I can do something outside of sports.
Right.
And so I started speaking in the off season. And then it wasn't until I became an Olympian was able to kind of pivot that and do it full time. But here's what I learned this in sports, and this is my mentality in business. Adrian, I have a bias towards action.
Mm-hmm.
Things might be uncertain, things might be uncomfortable. I might not be able to see my next step, but I have a bias towards action. And that has really helped me out, because here's what I really thought was going to happen. I thought I was going to play a long, long time in the NFL, have a really long career, make a bunch of money, and then retire.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't have a lot of book smart, but I have a lot of common sense. So I wouldn't have blown all that money. But here's what would have happened had I have done that. I would not be the man I am today, because I didn't have those necessary setbacks to help springboard me forward.
Right.
Because, here I go from the NFL to the CFL to Olympic bobsledding. Now I'm a keynote speaker. I own an insurance agency and wrote a book. That's a random conglomerate of things, right? And I would say our listeners, sometimes, you get to a spot where you're like, how am I even here? I didn't even think, I'd be in this position. But I have this bias towards action, because I understand that the seeds I plant today will reap a harvest tomorrow. And it can be either a good harvest,
right,
and this is where people miss this, Adrian, or it will be a barren nothing.
Right.
And so what that does is it helps me stack up these days of being consistent, of what James Clear likes to wrote the book Atomic Habits. I just want to get 1% better every day. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether it's in sport, whether it's in business, whether it's whatever. Can I get 1% better? Because I can manage that. And when you do that over time, things really start to happen.
And that was going to be a question I had for you, right? Is that bias toward action, that sounds big and that sounds grand and that sounds exciting. What would you say to someone who is on the I haven't taken a step yet side of things?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm scared because I might fail, right? And I'm scared of failing because I don't want to look bad. I don't want to fail, money, whatever the thing is. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I think we need to adjust that framework a little bit. Look, nobody likes failing. Nobody wants to. Nobody likes suffering. It is a necessary part of life. I think if we understand that we can embrace failure to springboard us forward, understand that's a possibility. The other thing is, look, we don't want to go out there and make a decision that is rushed and rash.
Right.
But what we want to do is we want to do our due diligence. We want to gather as much information as we can, and then we make the best possible decision for that moment. And then we do the same thing tomorrow. So I would, to the person who maybe has that thought process, is we do need to adjust that framework. And the other thing I might tell them is, and I speak about this in a lot of my keynotes, is let's borrow wisdom from men and women who have gone before us. And so, for example, when I got to the Olympic Training Center, while I was Olympic hopeful and not an Olympian yet, I would borrow wisdom from current Olympians, from Olympic medalists. I'd watch what lifts they were doing. I'd watch when they'd eat. I'd watch what food they were eating, what food they would not take from the cafeteria. It's the same thing in business, right? I look at speakers who are further down the road. How is their website designed? They've got 10 books out. I've got one. So what it does is it gives me that guidance to take that step when it feels a little bit murky.
I love that. I think, obviously don't fail for failing's sake, right?
Yeah.
The idea of using someone who's ahead of you in the game as a template, I think, is so important. I mean, I tell people that on the recruiting side all the time is, tell me a little bit about your goals. And once they tell me, I'm like, all right, go find someone who is where you want to be, and figure out how they got there, right? What was their process? What was their steps? And you may not be exactly like them, but I bet you they have a process that you could mimic to some degree that would help you get to where you're wanting to go as well. So I love that.
Spot on.
It's good. It's good. Well, okay. So for you, tell everybody a little bit about what you have going on today. Obviously, you do a keynote speaking, right? I know that you have a best-selling book that's out there as well, and probably a couple of other things out there. Someone wants to kind of get in touch with you about that, or invite you to speak, what do they need to do there?
Yeah. So my website is johnnyquinnusa.com. And then all my social media handles are at Johnny Quinn USA. So if you're on social media, with most people are, let's connect there. If you've enjoyed this podcast, this interview here, I'd encourage you to go to my website, johnnyquinnusa.com, and then click on articles. I've written a few articles around my daily routine. I've got a morning routine. I've got an evening routine. I've got how to read 30 books in a year. I've got a TEDx talk out on understanding the Olympic mindset. So I think it's important that we get good, healthy content in front of people that want more. So I've got everything listed on my website, johnnyquinnusa.com. And while you're there, I've got a think guide. I've put together some of the best books, some of the best blogs, and some of the best podcasts that I mentally use to prepare for the Olympics and what I use every single day in business. And so you can download that for free. It's all at my website. My articles are free. My Think Guide are free. You can download that johnnyquinnusa.com.
That's good. I appreciate that as someone who's been a competitor and then now in business myself. I had a coach once tell me, in college, he would always say garbage in, garbage out, right? And what he was trying to say was, hey, if you intake bad things, you will get out a bad performance. And so intake good things. Things like Johnny's information here. I can vouch for the TED Talk. It's great quality content there as well.
Thanks.
Wrapping up here, Johnny. Yeah, of course. A couple questions I would like to ask every guest here at the end is, one is, what advice would you give yourself, give your 20-year-old self? And we've got everybody from executives in the transportation industry to people just starting out their career, to recruiting company owners and firms. But I think it's so interesting. I want to learn from people and kind of see where they came from to where they are now. What advice would you give yourself or your 20-year-old self?
Yeah, so I was always, and I still am today, a lead by example. So for example, when I was in college, 20 years old, right? I'm in college. We could lift in the weight room between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. before practice. I chose to lift at 5:30 in the morning because I wanted to be the first one in the weight room. If going back now, that was a great thing to do, to lead by example. I do wish I would have been more vocal, Adrian. Right? I thought, well, as long as I'm leading by example and people see that I'm trying to, I'm the first one in the weight room, which I was, or, at the end of practice, even though I'm a starter and I've been a 4-year starter, I'm trying to win every gasser during conditioning. I never took those off. I didn't take any play off. Yeah. I do wish I would have been more vocal, right? Maybe called people out. I just thought, well, I'm going to lead by example and they'll see my work on the field, which they did. And that's a great position to be. But that would be one thing I'd change. I would have been more vocal.
I love that. I think it speaks to accountability, people respecting that leadership, which is great. That's good. Yeah. And then the last question I'd like to ask is, what books would you recommend that have been influential on your journey? Is there a book or a couple books in the past few years that you've read that have been impactful to you?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. And not to give a spoiler alert, but if you download my Think Guide, johnnyquinnusa.com/think, you're going to get my top 10. So I'm going to give you 3, but if you want to see my top 10, it's there. There's been a few that have just really been game changers for me. Atomic Habits by James Clear, I thought was fantastic. That's a great book. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. That was a game changer. And then Living for Eternity by John Bevere. That one will rock your socks off. But those are 3 that if our listeners haven't consumed those, go get those. Those are my top 3. Now you've got 7 left to see on my my top 10 guide.
Yeah, you got a teaser there, right?
That's there good. You go. Yeah. Yeah.
I can speak to the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I've read that one. It is very good and really helped me as a achiever personality. As a goal, setting type of personality. It makes you rethink that, kind of where you're going and why, and how to go about that. So definitely can speak to that one. Very, very good. So, well, Johnny, thank you so much for being on. We appreciate it. I know that the listeners will appreciate it as well. Guys, make sure that you connect with Johnny on social media. If you've got questions for him, feel free to reach out. He's pretty interactive and obviously gracious. Got to be on our podcast as well. And go Team USA, all right?
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, bye.
thanks for listening to the Recruiting Stories podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on LinkedIn, Adrian Chapman, and Cover 3 Consulting is our company page. Also check out our website, www.cov3consulting.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and we just simply want to remind you that you can change the world by putting people in a position where they can do the most good, and you do that by recruiting. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.